Alright, welcome back to the shop. So, today we're going to take a look at two jigsaws. Maybe three. But we're going to look at a brand new, old stock, 12 volt Power-Plus jigsaw with orbital action. And we're going to look at its fancy new M18 counterpart. We'll just take a look at the differences between the two and maybe what came with stuff back, in between the eras of when you get them. This is brand new as of the year I'm recording this, 2020. And this tool here is circa 1990s. Once we get it open, we'll see exactly what year it was from. But I thought this might be an interesting video. Compare the two saws. So let's get into the old guy first. It's interesting, they still are using boxes. Milwaukee, I think, has gone back to that a little bit more, that you can buy just a bare tool in a box, which is kind of nice. It's not as much throwaway materials and what have you. But let's see here on the box. It's 12 volt Power-Plus. Powerful rare earth motor, so this is brushed. Shouldn't be any surprise with that. 2 amp hour battery. Now, spoiler alert, the battery's not going to work on this, but the 24 watt hours, maybe I'll try and do some calculations on the batteries that we're going to be using on it, and we'll see what the difference is. 4 levels of orbiting action, so that's this here. On the image, you can choose the different levels there. Quick blade lock, so that was kind of new in the 90s. That was probably a pretty big deal, to be honest with you, because these prior to that they had set screw like the old Sawzalls did. So the quick blade lock thing is probably a pretty big deal for the 90s. Tilt base, that's pretty common for a lot of jigsaws even today. Dust collection, that may or may not have been a pretty new feature in jigsaws at the time. So that's kind of neat to see that they were getting into that sort of stuff then. And includes tool with battery pack, yada yada. So there we go, that's what's on the box. It is interesting to see that even on the box it says made in Germany, so that's kind of neat. A lot of these Power-Plus tools were indeed made in Germany, so I don't know if it was because the Atlas Copco or AEG ties at the time, but a lot of this stuff was made in Germany. So let's open this guy up. And we can see right inside we have a nice proper owner's manual here. And one of the neat things with these older manuals that they gave you, they used the staples. There we can see it. They used the staples that would fit in a ring binder, so you could actually put all these in a ring binder and have them for whatever purpose you want. Oh yeah, look at that, plenty of languages. Nothing that we haven't really already talked about there, but we'll see a different format in operator's manual when we get to the new one. And what do we got here? We got, so I should turn that around so you can see it. We got a battery, 2.0 amp hour. I can throw this on a charger, but I doubt it'll do anything. That's been sitting with no charge in it for a long time, but brand new. And here we go. Here's our saw. We'll get that out. And I don't want to forget blade. And we have a Swiss-made blade. That's pretty neat. I doubt we'll see a Swiss blade made blade in the new one, but you never know. So let's take a look at the saw here a little bit closer. It's nicely made. The switch feels pretty good on it actually. Here's that adjustable action that orbital action that they talked about there. The battery in its design format clips on like this. Pretty nice and slender actually. I think we'll see a similar arrangement on the new one. Obviously that's not going to do anything when I turn it on because the battery's long dead. Since they're advertising with branding here for quick lock, I'm going to assume that this is pretty new and state of the art for the time. Here we have our plate here. Strokes per minute 1700, and this was made in 1996, so that's pretty neat to see there. Glass fiber reinforced PA6, pretty well made. Here's our dust collection system here. You stick a vacuum inside of there, so that I feel like that probably would have been a fairly new feature at the time. And you know, it seems like it would have a nice feel. I've always liked this style of jigsaw because they're kind of low profile and easy to maneuver. So what we have here, we have made in Germany, and it's a pretty quick overview look there. Looks like they have some degree markers here on that. It's for the tilt, and the tilt adjusts. Okay, so the tilt adjusts with a set screw here. I'm not going to play with it because we'll maybe we'll try doing a test cut with these two and compare how they do against each other. So I'll keep that straight, but I think you guys get the idea. You loosen the set screw and this thing will, you know, rotate one way or the other, and you can make your angled cuts. So there's the old, kind of neat, nice tool. I'm happy it's kind of a neat find, new old stock. So we'll set that aside and get out the other one. Okay, so here we are looking at the other one. We can see the branding has changed a bit here over the years. Still a barrel style jigsaw, new, and battery not included. You know, whatever. So what do we have here? Higher blade speed than corded, probably higher blade speed than old school too. Power to cut hard materials. We'll find out. We're going to probably cut a piece of 1/4 inch plate with the two. Let's see here. Cuts up to 105 feet per charge. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing to say, and that's probably dependent on what material exactly it is that you're cutting. But interesting things they chose to put on the box. Here we go on the back. I'm just comparing a little bit. The back of the other one, I can grab it. It just really has another language on it. It's the same thing. So here we're reiterating our. Ooh, that's bad. Okay, there we go. So there we are reiterating our higher blade speed, and we have some arbitrary bar graphs there showing that. Power to cut the hard materials, softer materials, harder materials. I guess it looks good. And then here we go with that. So they're just reiterating all that. This is brushless, so it's a 3-phase AC motor in there that they're creating the AC from the DC battery. So let's get this guy open and see what we get with it. Okay, so right off the bat, we can see this too has a dust collection system, and they've changed it, and we'll take a look at the two. This is an adapter for a vacuum, and we'll look at the difference between the two ways of doing dust collection. take it out here. We also have a blade, and this too is Swiss made. Who knew? That's pretty exciting. So that's nice. Got the saw itself. And that's all that's in the box. So now what you get is a handsome little packet, and they're sharing duty here. The specs for this saw are the same as the specs for the traditional D-handle saw, and that, you know, that's probably the same inner guts, and they just changed the way the handles are a little bit. So there we go. We're multiple languages and what have you, but their styling with the manuals has changed a little bit. I believe the old one had a actual kind of photo that they had of the tool that was black and white and whatnot, and the branding's a little different. Different company owns Milwaukee now than they did at that time, so it makes sense they'd make it their own. And it comes with the typical wish list fold out many tiered thing to, you know, buy them all, right? So what else do we got here? We got, okay, we have, so this one comes some assembly required. It has the plastic doodah for the blade guard area, just not on it. And here's another plastic guard. Almost launched that across the shop. And this too is a piece of plastic, part of our guard system, no doubt. Alright, and what everybody wants to see is the saw itself. So there we go. So now when we look at the saw, we have the 4 levels of orbital action, 0 being none, so they kind of kept that the same. We have our switch here. I don't know if that's a momentary switch or not. I guess it is. I don't know if I'm going to like that or not, but whatever. Here's a rotary dial here, 1 through A. I don't know. Guess we'll see what that's all about. And still quick lock, but we aren't advertising it because everything is quick lock now. There we go. And we have the nice plastic guard like we did on the other. Okay, so if we take this little dancing shoes off here, we can see there's still an Allen set screw in there, much like the other one had. And we have a stowed away Allen wrench in the tool here, right here, to adjust that. So that's very similar. Looks like they have markings here that get you your various degrees. There we go. So it looks like we have detents that will get you pinned in to where you're at, so you can be a little bit more precise, whereas we'll have to look at the other one. The other one very well may have detents too, and I just overlooked it. So actually let's just do that now. Seems we're comparing everything, apples and apples. So yes, here we go. You can see there's actually some teeth up in there. I don't know if you can see it or not. Maybe at that angle. There we go. Some teeth up in there, and it looks like this is a variation of the same type thing. You'll have some indexable points to get those degrees a little bit easier than just the old hairy eyeball. So that's kind of nice. Let me get the other guard put together on the other one, and we'll compare those. Okay, so here we go. Take a look at the guards. The shape of the two has actually stayed fairly similar over the years. It appears as though the opening here has gotten wider which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I could see where perhaps the center, the smaller center on the older one might actually be handier when you're cutting on something narrow. You have a little bit better footprint. But really, potato. I think there's probably some guys that would prefer something the other way. And there's the base is a little bit longer on the new one. Overall width is very similar. Okay, and the little plastic insert on both is very similar. They both have this little notch here. This one's a little bit more pronounced. Kind of interesting. They both have that. Height-wise, the old one might be just a hair higher. I'm trying to line these up as best I can. Just a hair higher, not a whole lot. Maybe about a ½ inch or so. Lengthwise, fairly similar until we get batteries on there. They're actually going to be pretty much the same. You can see I'm already getting that dirty. This old one does not have any rubber overmolding on it, whereas the new one here does have quite a bit. This is a puffer function here, I'm assuming. That's not on, and that is on, so that would have a little bit of a thing that would blow air in there to try and help clean your chips out, which is kind of an interesting feature. So yeah, there we go. This one, not made in Germany. We know where that was made. But overall, it does feel like a fairly solid tool. I think the new one's a little heavier, but they both feel pretty good. The old one probably would be a little more rocky, just because of that footprint being a little less. I can feel it's easier to tip this one back over the other, but that's not really, a big deal. So let's get some batteries and see what happens here. Okay, and we're back. So I guess I should also make mention of this newer style jigsaw. Has a 3,500 stroke per minute, as compared to the 1,700 stroke per minute. Easy focus. Focus. There we go. So that's a 1,700 stroke per minute. So the new one's going almost twice as fast as the old one. So I guess that'll get you some more jam in your jelly jar there too. So here we are with the battery on. I chose to throw the 3 amp hour on. It's nice and sleek. And really the jigsaw is not gonna take a lot of power. So there we go. That's what we have there. And for a battery on the 12 volt, we have, what the heck is that? So what I did is kind of interesting. And I happened to find out a while ago that Milwaukee in Europe has a M14 line. So I got the old wheels turning, and since these batteries are largely made of unobtainium, I got some old ones and have kind of butchered them, as you can see here, with an adapter. And the M14 battery, since it's nominal voltage somewhere around where this would have run anyway, is a pretty decent option for, a conversion. And the nice thing about this style battery, if you do that sort of thing, is you have basically a cheap voltage meter in the battery, because there is no low voltage shutoff circuit in this tool at all. It's a run until it dies type tool, And with lithium batteries, you really need to watch that. You cannot run them till they die, especially with no protection. That's why when you run your lithium tools, it'll seem like it's running fine, and then all of a sudden it just shuts off. Well, that's because the low voltage circuit cutoff in the lithium tool says, yeah, you know, you're going to destroy this battery. If you go any further, I'm turning you off. And then it's time to charge the battery and move on with life. So all that being said, really be careful about, if you do some sort of conversion like this, keep track of the voltage, kind of OCD like when you're running these tools, because you could damage your batteries. And that's the moral of the story. Lithium batteries in extreme cases can become unstable and maybe even catch on fire if you take them down too low. So, you know, standard disclaimers involved in all of that. So there we go. But does it work? Sure, it works. It works quite well. So if we want to take a look at that orbiting action, I don't know if we'll be able to see it or not, but let's see. Maybe I ought to put a blade in it, huh? And we'll see if we can see the difference. Take your battery out, and we'll put the blade on that came with it. Quick lock. Okay, so here we go. See, we're pretty straight up and down there, and we'll go to the extreme. So you can see that rocking orbital action there. And that's really beneficial for cutting wood and what have you. If you're cutting metal, you really don't want to do that a whole lot. It just ends up bouncing around a lot. I have another jigsaw that this darn thing wants to always move itself to orbital, and it's really annoying, which actually kind of prompted me getting these guys. I planned on getting the Fuel one, and then I just fell across this, and you know, projects, you can never have enough of them. So that's kind of a quick look at this one's run here on M14 battery. I do have the 12-volt battery on charge there. Seems like it might be taking a charge. We'll see what we get with it, but we'll probably hear a tone difference because the M14 battery is just a few more volts more, so it'll give it a little bit more power, and more power is more gooder. And I have to say, I've run a few of these old tools on either M14 or M18 batteries, depending on what it is, and the old tools perform quite well on new batteries. You just got to watch your voltages and stuff. Downside to this adapter, well, it's not going to sit anyway, but it does want to tip back. But you know, when you're driving the saw around, you're holding on to her anyway. It's a little clunky, but you know, an adapter under the battery would have been kind of low to dragging on everything, so I just kind of shacked this adapter together out of stuff because it's what you do. So let's take a look at the other guy here. There we go. We can see that we have the similar adjuster here, and this actually feels pretty nice. I'm hoping that this isn't easily moved like the other one was, because that was kind of frustrating to try and run that saw. Let's get this blade in. Quick lock. Ooh. Put our battery back in. And I have it on a slower speed, so maybe we can see the difference. This one here to read up on this. I wonder if it's got some sort of current sensing that it'll vary. We'll see. So here we go. If I just bump that, the light comes on, runs, and oh, okay, so it stays running. You don't have to hold that. That's kind of nice. So there we go. That's the straight function, and we'll go to full orbital. You can see a similar thing there. I'll crank her up to 11 there, and we'll see what we get. She's going to scream. That's got a lot more noise to her than the old guy, and it's going a heck of a lot faster. I would imagine the torque on this is probably at that high end there is probably second to very few. That's really moving for a jigsaw. So let's take a look at a few more things here, and maybe I'll see if I can cut some 1/4 inch plate with it. Okay, so one thing I didn't look at before is the differences in the dust system. This new one has this fancy dancy adapter dealio here that gets jammed on in there, and it's too tall to get under the camera, but you get the idea. It's a little bit of an extension there, and the old one just has this circular port that we looked at before. And so when we look at the two designs, you can see they kind of incorporated this angling feature into the dust collection, which it got the tool profile a little bit lower. The motor's just about at the same height. There we go. But it seems like, maybe not, but it seems like they have a little bit more body in here. Maybe that's just appearances, because I can see into the clockworks there a little bit, and it's no big deal. It doesn't affect anything. But there we go. A look at two very similar but slightly different, and very different and slightly similar jigsaws from a really long era apart from each other, almost 30 years. And that's, that sort of thing is fascinating to me. Where cordless tools have gone in those 30 years. This seems like still a fairly viable tool, to be honest with you, especially with the new batteries. I could see the old batteries probably not lasting super long on it, but these, the new batteries and the new tools are just pretty amazing. What you can get away with all that stuff. So while we're looking at jigsaws, I thought I would bring another one in here to the party. And this one's kind of interesting, and maybe we'll just do a video on it all on its own as part of a different series. If you're in North America right now, you're kind of confused if you know anything about Milwaukee Tools, because M28 or 28 volt jigsaw? Yeah, Milwaukee actually did in Europe and other parts of the world. They had 28 volt jigsaws and other tools that were not available here in North America. I happened to pick one up, and maybe we'll do a Forbidden Fruit series, or we'll just include them in the M28. We'll start a 28 volt series or something like that, because I do have a few other 28 volt tools, which, they're kind of nice, fun to have around, fun to play with. But you can see similar elements here between that and this. They're akin to each other. This is, I don't know what, it's probably about 10 years after this. So the handles are almost identical here on the top. At this point, though, the gearbox mechanism and what have you has started to evolve into something, you know, more into what it was later. Still has quick lock thing here, but I guess maybe in Europe they call it fixed tech. Kind of interesting. The foot, a little bit longer. I don't know if you can see that or not. Yep, a little bit longer. And the new one, a little bit longer still. So they're progressively getting a little longer with the feet. I can say that this one also falls backwards with a battery on it. One nice feature on the 28 volt one is it has two speeds. This is kind of handy. If any of you guys have a 28 volt grinder and you look in the clamshell, you'll see a little dot there. Well, that light and button, that's a speed selector button, is what would go in that. So just a quick look at a different version in between years on the cordless jigsaws, and if there's interest, maybe we'll do some video on some of these other 28 volt tools that we got here around the shop. Alright, here we are over at the vise. I got two brand new Lennox saw blades, so we'll put one in each saw, and we'll try and do an apples to apples comparison. Hopefully everything will work out well here. You're not going to get the feedback that I get from using them. Maybe I'll try and time it and put on the screen here if I can figure out how to do it. How long it takes to cut through. I guess I will, maybe I'll do 2 cuts with the new saw. We'll try and cut full bore, plaid speed, and then maybe we'll try and dial it back a little bit to more the speed of the old one and see if it makes a difference or not. I don't know. Maybe we'll just cut them so. But let's get to it. So here we go. We got the blade in the old saw, M14 battery. We'll let that focus again here, and let's do our cut. Okay, so naturally I had some technical difficulties while trying to film a video. Imagine that never happens to anybody. Camera swung off out of the way there, and we kind of lost what we were looking at. Fair amount of vibration to that tool. It had a good amount of power, I gotta say, so we'll see how this new one compares, and maybe we'll give the other one a second chance. So here we go. We will see what this guy's got. Okay, so that new saw cut through there like a hot butter through a knife. There's a considerable difference, I gotta say. Most of that probably has something to do with the speed in which the cutting's getting done. And we're talking about 1/4 inch steel plate here. You know, if we're cutting stuff like aluminum or wood or whatever, we'd want to pretty much slow the saw down anyway. So the older one kind of, you know, certainly falls into a place there. But I still have some bar stock here, so let's see if we can do some more cuts with these saws and see what we get. I'll try and keep the camera on the cut for the old one this time. Hey, we had it on there the whole time. How about that? So after those 2 cuts, we took the battery down I don't know if it'll focus on it, but we took the battery down to 2 bars. You could see that. It was at 3 bars when we started. Let's see, I'm going to try out this auto setting on the new one and see what we get. I gotta regrip that. Okay, we'll do another cut with the new one. This time I'm going to try out that auto setting and see what we get with it. So here we go. Okay, so there we go. We cut that off with that on the auto setting, and that was interesting. I don't know if you could hear it, but it actually ramped the tool up when I loaded it, and then it stayed loaded or ramped up, which is kind of fascinating. It did systematically dump everything off the bench. I don't know if you saw anything walk off and fall on the floor or not, but that's always fun. So let me clean up some stuff here, and we'll have a few last thoughts. Alright, so since we had a chance to play around with both, I think there's some neat features here. I didn't showcase the orbital action just because what we were cutting wasn't really lending itself very nicely to on that sort of thing. Metal really jumps around a lot and makes your cut kind of nasty with orbital action. So I didn't test the orbital action on either of these. This one obviously really has a much higher speed to it. This is, half as fast basically, but still quite the contender. So Milwaukee Power-Plus, thumbs up for me. I have always had a soft spot in my heart for older things. So not to say that the new stuff isn't good at all. New stuff's great. I think it's interesting, some of the design features. They have the power switch here on both sides, lefty or righty. No issues there. I think there's some neat things. Ergonomically, this saw feels pretty nice. Your thumb wants to fall in this area, and this is a decent top spot for your palm. I think that's also very nice. And this guy here also, my hand wanted to fall here when I was running this, and it felt good there. And grabbing it on top here, just like that, felt natural. I think both saws felt well when using them. So let's get the blades out here. Maybe we can measure how long the stroke is on both, because we have the paint worn off there. Blade still feels decent on this one, not like we smoked it or anything like that, which we wouldn't have thought the speed we were going. And this guy here, fun little side note on this one, as tools get a little newer, we also have a spring release, or I should say eject, for the blade, whereas this one, quick lock was your big deal at the era, and now you have spring eject quick lock, which, it's actually kind of a nice feature though, because it flings that thing out of there. Looking at these, we can see some different things. We're using different parts of the blades between the two saws, which is interesting. I believe this was out of the newer one. So we're actually, in order to cut deeper, we would need longer saws than what we needed with the old one. The old one's entire mechanism is sitting lower, which I think is interesting. And the stroke is actually quite similar between the two saws when we line those up. The old one might actually be just a hair more. So that's interesting that the old one has a little bit more stroke. Possibly. We'd have to actually measure it out, which we're not going to do. But I think that's an interesting little thing there, that the blades sit differently in the two saws. Does it really matter? Probably not. But just a fun little thing to notice there. So there we go. Look at some jig saws. Jig saws not really the go-to for everything tool around the shop, but they are good to have around. When you need one, and they definitely serve a purpose very well. And I think both of these, if you have an old 12-volter and still keep the 12-volt batteries going, I think this is a great tool. There's nothing wrong here. I think it's fairly state-of-the-art for its time. You know, the mid-90s, having a quick lock blade and you know, vacuum attachment and what have you. That's pretty state-of-the-art for the time. Now it's kind of expected and everything. And here we have the upgrade with the spring release type deal. You know, spring eject on the blades. The rollers on everything are very similar. They both utilize a decent roller arrangement for the blade to ride on. It looks like the roller on the new one is a little bit wider than the roller on the old one. So I don't know if we can see that in there or not, but it is definitely, there we go, maybe we can see it. It's definitely wider. And the groove is decent and deep on both though, so I don't think, you know, this one probably will skate off to the side more if you get it out than this one, and that can be frustrating when that happens. And you know, because every time you do that, you know, you're pushing everything to the limits, and then it pops out and you get all frustrated with yourself. So other than that, quick look, well, not really a quick, this was a pretty long video. But we took a look at some new and some old. If there's more interest in videos like this, or if you want to see more on either of these saws, put some comments down and we'll see what we can do. But I do have some older cordless tools that I've had a long time, and I also have some newer replacements. I do run both here in the shop. Sometimes I'm just in the mood to play around with the older stuff, and that's what I do. But I do like the newer stuff, and you know, sometimes when you want to crank stuff out and get stuff done, going to that is nice. But either way, if you guys want to see some more, if I didn't cover something, or if you want to see some other different tools, types of stuff, let it in the comments. And thanks for watching. Have a great day. Hope you enjoyed. Quick bonus clip for you guys who hung around to the end. This old battery charged straight through. She's a little warm. I don't know if that's a good or bad sign. Not hot, but here's the tool with its intended arrangement. It does sit up straight, it doesn't fall backwards, and we put my adapter abortion thing on there. I don't know if you can hear the difference, but it does run a little bit faster, and the current available is definitely different between these two battery types. This being a 4 amp hour battery and this one being a 2 amp hour. Different voltages at that, so this would actually be just a hair more. So there you go, some quick bonus footage for you guys that hung around to the end. And once again, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.